All right, welcome back. So, this mini lecture is going to talk about manifest destiny in the United States in the early 1800s. And we're going to talk about five broad themes that you need to understand, or events that you need to understand when going to read and do more research about this topic. So, let's dig into it. So, manifest destiny was you could call it a cultural outlook, ethos, belief that holds sway in America in the first half of the 19th century. Generally, it was the idea that what would become the continental United States belonged to Americans, particularly to white Americans, particularly to white men, but generally to white Americans. And the idea was that it was ours by right of conquest. So, what that meant was American society then would see this talked about, discussed, valorized in literature at the time. It would influence a number of American politicians and American domestic and foreign policy and a number of different actions in and around the growing United States at the time, and would influence why and where we would want to grow and expand the country. So, again, this is based on the idea of expanding. This is based on the idea that other groups of individuals, particularly non-white individuals, essentially can't be included or shouldn't be included as a part of this story. So, first thing then for us to know is the Black Hawk War. Now, this is a conflict with Native Americans, notably led by a chief named Black Hawk, fought by the end of the 1820s, early 1830s, around Illinois. And the culmination of this, of course, is that Chief Black Hawk is captured and paraded around by his white captors, and it leads eventually to something called the Treaty of Chicago, where what you see is the real sort of forced removal of indigenous people from large portions of Illinois, which had become a state in 1818. So second thing for us to know would be 54, 40, or fight. So you had these territorial claims in the West and Northwestern territories in the United States in the early part of the 19th century. So the British have claims, the Spanish have claims, the Russians have claims, and in the early 1840s, the Americans are angry with the British and others about being able to expand access and borders to these territories. So you have a president who is running for election, with this slogan, 54, 40, or fight. Now, eventually the Americans get involved in a war with Mexico, not Britain, in the 1840s, but this is a part of the cultural landscape at the time. Third, Trail of Tears. Trail of Tears. So, forced removal of indigenous people from colonies and eventually states continued unabated into the early 1800s. Andrew Jackson, the President of the United States in particular, takes the lead in this. You see the passage of the Indian Removal Act, and you see the creation of reservations west of the Mississippi. You see a number of indigenous people challenge this. You see a number of tribal groups challenge this in through the courts. You see, in some cases, their court cases upheld their claims, but this is ignored by the administrations, and eventually what you'll see is the forced removal of these people from their tribal lands, east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi, and you'll see, of course, great and horrific brutality occurring en route. The numbers vary a little bit, but it's something like a quarter of all indigenous people who are forced along this Trail of Tears would die in a terrible tragedy. The fourth thing for us, Texas. So the eventual state of Texas is acquired by war in the 1830s, early 1840s. You see conflict with Mexico, originally for the creation of an independent Republic of Texas. And there's a lot there. Usually it's famed in song and story with Davy Crockett. The big thing for us to know would be something called the Battle of San Jacinto, which is really where a lot of this comes to a head. And then lastly, the Mexican-American War. This would be the final thing for us to note. So this begins in 1846. It culminates with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. And again, was a further demonstration of American resolve, manifest destiny, and how things like race is tied into expansionism in the first half of the 19th century. Thanks so much.